Welcome, everybody, wherever you are listening or watching to the Blue Jay Center podcast, brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. I'm James Price, along with my guy on this side. That side. Rob Pentillamon. Appreciate you, buddy. Good to see you. And look, we talked last week about positive news, and it was weird talking positive about the Toronto Blue Jays. Well, if you like positivity, we got all that for you. We'll get right into it now.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. Blue Jays Center.
Bautista drives it deep left field. Gone!
The sickest Toronto Blue Jays podcast. It's gonna be sick.
All right. Well, you know what? We talked about positivity. And it's not just because the Blue Jays have won 6 in a row before yesterday's kind of garbage-looking game.
But technically it's 5, though, Pricey. Technically it's 5.
No, Rob, we're not going to do this. Okay, you listen to as many podcasts as I actually more than me. I'm not doing this. They won 6 in a freaking row. Well, one's dated back to June. Bite me. No, they won 6 straight, Rob. 4 against a team who, God, they feel like the White Sox in the Los Angeles Angels.
Yes, and, White Sox West.
Yeah, and both games of the doubleheader against the Red Sox lost yesterday, but it was great, man. I mean, first off, how you doing, buddy? How's the week been? I know you're obviously moved into school and whatnot, so how's the move been?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The move has been cool. My last couple of days here in Aurora before I'm going out to Windsor for law school, so I'm just chilling. Not a whole lot of responsibilities, just indulging in this fun part of the Jays season. I don't know whether it's because they're winning games, which they've done. They've won quite a bit of games here in the month of August, whether they're hitting home runs, their home run streak extended. Now I think to believe, is it 15 or 16 technically? Because that one game that was back in June, I don't know. I'm all confused over the phrase Pricey, but that was quite fun to watch. I don't know. We'll talk about why this team is so fun. Maybe it's because we're just so starved for positivity that all of a sudden we have a glimmer of it and we're just, really milking all of it. And maybe, who knows? I want to ask you, are we a little delusional to think that maybe, just maybe, can this team actually be decent in 2025? We'll talk all about that. But overall, how you been?
I've been good, man. Like, I hate that my emotional ride is usually based off of how my sports teams are doing. I hate that with a passion. So winning 6 in a row, man, we're vibing. Oh, we were feeling good this past week, I'll tell you that. But let's get right into this, pal, because nothing new.
The highlight of the week.
There's really been nothing new with me. Bowden Francis, buddy.
Yes.
I mean, holy crap. Like, I think we talked about it after like the first 2 starts he had that was really good. And we're like, okay, is this something sustainable? And we're like, a couple starts or whatever. Now it's like the entire month of August. And it's not just that he's been good in the month of August. Nobody, except for Taylor Ward and his mouth, have been able to hit Bowden Francis. It has been absolutely incredible. I'm going to rip through the stats right through August, his game logs, because it's mind-boggling, right? We watched Bowden as kind of like, you got a long relief guy, maybe a guy if you want to stretch him out and have depth in the minor leagues, that's your guy. Well, in August, if you take out the Yankees kind of outing where he went a third of an inning, I believe that was probably in extras where they got walked off, so whatever. Right. His last 4, so it was 4 starts in August. 5 innings of 2-run ball against the Orioles, where he only allowed 3 hits and struck out 7, walked 1 guy. Then you go to his next start against the Angels. It's the Angels. Who the hell cares? But he went 7 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, and 8 punch-outs, didn't walk anybody. The next start against the Cubs at Wrigley, he was outstanding there. 7 innings, 3 hits, no runs, again, no walks, and 7 punch-outs. All of these starts have massive strikeout numbers. And, of course, the last one where, man, he flirted with that no-no. Got to the 9th inning. Everyone's kind of shitting bricks at this point because we're like, no one wants to say it. If anybody's saying it, probably getting a punch in the face.
It was my fault. I'll talk about it later. I think I may have caused it.
Oh, okay. I want to hear this. And then obviously Taylor Ward went deep to start the 9th inning, gets the standing ovation. He was awesome. 8 innings of 1 hit ball, 1 run, allowed the solo shot, walked 3, and struck out 12. Yes. I'll let you take it away after all that. What are we seeing here? Like, it's ridiculous.
And look, honestly, I have to eat crow. You've probably seen on this podcast. I've been trying to fade Bowden Francis for a couple starts now. I've been trying to say, look, it's great, but overall, I mean, you need to see Jake Bloss pitch. Bowden Francis, it's nice what he's done, but this is not a guy that's going to be a staple of this, this pitching rotation for the foreseeable future, or so I thought. And I thought, look, these Angels starts are cute. The Cubs start was cute, all that stuff. But I mean, it's not quite all like that. He's like you mentioned. I mean, you didn't mention specifically, but throughout the month of August, he had a couple of Orioles starts in there. Both of them went very well. The Blue Jays won both of those games. That was right
Mhm.
around the time of the trade deadline. And just overall, I did a little bit of a deeper dive into Bowden Francis' season, checking the under the hood numbers, and I was honestly not I was pretty surprised how good it's been. I mean, you look at the Baseball Savant page, as you'd expect, nothing really stands out over the top great in terms of his stuff and all that, which we kind of expected. But there's no legitimate concerns when you look at the Baseball Savant page. You kind of wish that there was a little bit more swing and miss, and
Sure.
the hard hit percentage is all right. But I mean, the walk percentage is great. He's striking out decent guy, like a decent amount of guys, almost a K per nine. You know, uh, the barrel percentage is a little high, but that's just about it. The hard hit, the exit velo, it's not overly concerning. The expected ERA right where it's at for the season. So
Mhm.
I don't know. Bowden Francis, a guy with an ERA around 4, that has value. That has value at the major league level. I think you heard Buck Martinez on Blair and Barker today talk about how he thinks that because of his size as a pitcher, he's able to take a lot of workload and pitch deep into ball games. And we've seen that now. He's gone 4 straight starts, going 7 innings. So I don't know. I mean, it's my tune has kind of changed a bit. I still think that if Bowden Francis
Mhm.
is anything more than your 4 or 5 starter next year, it's a little bit of
Sure.
a concern. But I don't know. Maybe this little stretch by Bowden Francis has given me hope that he's more than just a stopgap. That he might be a guy who will factor in some shape or form redeemably in 2025. Now,
Yeah.
as for the no hitter,
Okay.
unless you want to touch
I
on
go
before
for
I
it.
tell you my
Yeah.
story. So as you mentioned at the top of the show, moving out to Windsor, moving out to my new place, and it was on Saturday. And we're waiting for the cable guy, the internet guy, trying to connect to basically trying to watch the game. So I'm like, okay, they gave the ranges. I'll be there from 1 to 6. Like, thanks, buddy. Thanks.
Your
I have
5 hour
nothing to do
gap.
at
Nice.
that point. Exactly. So what I do is I take out my phone, I go to Sportsnet Plus. I'm bored. I'm watching a bit of the game, no volume because I'm trying to I was my new place. I was trying to keep it mellow, not overly intensive like that. And so I couldn't hear anything. And after every inning, I wouldn't wait to see the line score. After every inning, they had the line score up, like runs, hits, and everything. I would turn
Mhm.
it off right after the final out was recorded. So I actually didn't know there was a no hitter going on until about the fifth or sixth inning,
Yeah.
until the internet got installed and I was watching it on my TV. And I'm just hearing Dan Schulman just refusing to say the 2 hyphenated words. It was just so fun to watch. And obviously, you have the other element of the pitch count. He's got his pitch count well over in the hundreds,
Yeah.
going through to the ninth inning. Like, are they actually going to let him finish this one out? And then the problem was is that the game had gone a little longer than I expected, and that night we actually had to go visit some friends who live in Detroit. So obviously across the border, you have to cross the international border. Who knows how long it's going to be? My parents were just like, "Okay, when are we going to leave? Like, we got to go. We have plans." And I'm like, "There's a no hitter going on. There's a no hitter going on." I had to spill the tea. I had to tell them that there's a no hitter going on because
Oh.
you know but my parents are not diehard baseball fans, but they understand what a no hitter is. They understand that it's rare, and without me telling them that, it would have been, it would have gone a little bit back and forth. So I had to spill the beans. I had to tell him the no hitter was going on, and sure enough, Taylor Ward hits a home run, the next batter, once the ninth inning started. And so I will take some responsibility for those who believe in those things. But in the end, still outstanding start from Bowden Francis. Great job by John Schneider and the Blue Jays to let him go deep
Yeah.
into that game, despite the fact that his pitch count was, I'm sure all the khakis and the analytics guys were just fuming on their couches when they're seeing him go 110, 115 pitches
Mhm.
deep into that thing. But great on them for giving him a shot. In the end, it wasn't meant to be, but it's nevertheless a tremendous start, regardless of who it's against for Bowden Francis. You just love to see it. Arguably the best moment of the season. I mean, obviously, had he actually done it, it would have been number one, undoubtedly. But even so, it was really fun to watch.
Let's be honest, Rob. That Angels series, regardless of you facing that team, was fun as hell, right? The Barger, Lo Perfido, Youngins back to back jacks to walk off the game, and then another one. Bowden's got a no into the ninth. It's awesome stuff. What I thought's interesting, and we talked about this, I think maybe in the last show, was that the strikeout numbers are sky high since this recent stretch. These 4 starts. Now, it could be obviously a couple of starts against the Angels, definitely doing that. 12 punch outs in the last one, 7 punch outs against the Cubs, 8 against the Angels, obviously, 7 against the Orioles in 5 innings of work.
12 then.
Which is crazy. It's great stuff too. I think it's the new splitter that he's got going on. He's been using that a ton. He's kind of threw away the breaking ball. And that splitter's nasty. Like that thing dies off a cliff. It gives you a little Kevin Gausman type feel to it. And with it being a big guy, right?
Doesn't have the same grip, but yeah, the extension
No,
itself.
yeah.
And honestly, that's one that's really stood out on his baseball savant page. Sorry to cut you off there, but his
Yeah, go for it.
extension is off the charts. I think it's like the 90th percentile. So, like you mentioned, that splitter, that extension is what allows it to be so nasty and come from that large arm angle.
And that's something that we heard coming into the spring was about, the new splitter. And we're all like, oh, okay, whatever. And then good spring. And we're like, oh, yeah, whatever. And then gets teed off on that first start against the Yankees. And we're like, spring training means nothing. And now all of a sudden 4 starts here in August. And he has been incredible. But I'm holding my breath until his next start. Obviously, it's going to be the finale of this series against the Red Sox at Fenway. Much better offense than anything he's faced. I mean, the Orioles one's fine, but 5 innings of 2-run ball isn't anything to get too crazy about against the Orioles. You're now playing a desperate Red Sox team at a wonky ballpark in Fenway. Let's see how he does. That's what I want to see. And if he goes out there and 8 punch outs through 6 and allows 1 run, and oh god, I mean, geez, we might need to talk more about it next week, but. And you mentioned Gray, and I wanted you to bring it up, was John Schneider leaving him in. I think that was a huge talking point, was that the pitch count was very high. He ended the game with 117. And again, he went into that final inning with what, like 114, I think it was? Something like that.
So it was 97 going into the 8th inning and 111 going into the 9th.
111, yeah. So 111 going into the 9th inning. The analytics guys, the khakis, as Kevin Barker loves to say, were crapping down their leg, and I love it. I love it. We're not making the playoffs. Let a youngin who's never had this stretch in his career go out there and try and finish off a no-hitter. You love to see it.
Well, one thing I will say is that I think what helps is that it's not really a youngin. It's a guy who's 28 years old. He's like, at this point, he's I mean, not quite a known commodity, but he's not a Ricky Tiedemann. He's not an Alek Manoah, a guy that you have to be careful with. God forbid, he gets injured and all of a sudden now his career is derailed. I mean, that people will be coming out with pitchforks if that were to happen. But with the Bowden Francis, like a guy that he's I think still after this recent stretch, regardless, I think even the most optimistic Bowden Francis guys will still suggest that he's still a high floor, low ceiling guy. He's not a guy that is going to need, his great stuff, and that he can kind of go a little bit more into a ball game. You're okay to extend him rather than, a top prospect that you project to be an ace of a rotation for the next half decade. So I think that element helped as well.
Also, shout out to Trevor Richards for getting DFA'd by the Twins. Yeah. Holy crap, that didn't take
right before we head out to Minnesota. We couldn't even have the the get together again.
Well, maybe you might back on the roster. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, the reason I brought up Trevor Richards, obviously, because he was basically the main piece in the deal with Milwaukee.
You're right. Yes. It was with the Rowdy Tellez trade. Yes, you're right.
When the Rowdy Tellez got traded away, it was Trevor Richards coming to the Blue Jays, and then a prospect. Well, the prospect at the time was Bowden Francis, and so you got all that. I mean, to take Trevor Richards for what it is. But you got Bowden Francis and Trevor Richards for Rowdy Tellez, who's been bouncing around all over.
And Richards was helpful. He did have his moments over the years for good Blue Jays teams.
Sure. We knew there was no future for him here, though, with Vladdy at first. We knew that was the case. We knew why they made that trade, and it's turned out pretty damn good. Now, the last thing I want to do on the Bowden Francis front is Taylor Ward. Okay. These are the comments post-game. If you haven't heard the comments, you're living under a rock. Well,
I'm sure people heard now after Chris Bassett made sure everyone
knew
about it the next day during Bowden Francis' interview.
I loved every bit of it. So this was after the almost no-hit bid from Bowden Francis. Taylor Ward, obviously the guy who hit the home run to break up the no-hit bid, was asked after the game about the home run and the no-hit bid being broken up, blah, blah, blah. This is the quote from Taylor Ward. I thought everything was hittable. Maybe to other guys, he made better pitches. Other guys were talking about his splitter, and being on, but I didn't think it was anything special. So Taylor Ward, okay. I'm trying to think from his standpoint. Your team is ass. You got nothing. You're one of the only semi-relevant players in that organization. It's a laughing stock. It's been a laughing stock forever. There's been a couple players who have been laughing stock, but the organization, boy, it has. And it could be it's definitely out of frustration. What am I talking about? But really? Like, really? You're also, talking down to your own teammates as well. So I think it's a little bit of a shot at them as well. So it's greasy. So then, before I let you get going here, Chris Bassett took into his own hands the next day, as obviously, was it Dan and Buck on the broadcast that day? I can't remember who it was.
I believe I can't remember. It was Dan for sure. I can't remember if it was Dan and Siddle or Dan and Buck.
Okay, so regardless, Dan on the broadcast, they were talking about in France, had the headset on, talking about the almost no hit bid, and Chris Bassett's firing seeds at Bowden, and meanwhile comes with a paper in behind him, like literally just a piece of printer paper with he wrote in pen. 15 innings, 2 hits, 20 strikeouts, hittable plus not special written on it. I mean, you gotta love that.
Yeah, I love it. Here's what I will say though, and I don't want to defend Taylor Ward. The tire take is obviously yes, like what you mentioned. You're diminishing your teammates. You are diminishing the starting pitcher who had a great day. You're diminishing yourself for hitting a home run off a guy who was quote unquote hittable. You know what I mean? Like if you hit a home run to break up a no hitter, wouldn't you want to prop it up? Wouldn't you want to like elevate your accomplishments? So from that aspect, it was weird. It was an odd thing to say. The Wire thing is we talked about Chris Bassett. Last few episodes, we had a Chris Bassett sound clip.
Yeah.
And I think our main theme was that, well, the problem is that athletes can't be unfiltered anymore, that they have to be censored and they can't say what they're feeling. So at the same time, I do feel like it would be a little hypocritical on our part if Taylor Ward, that's honestly what he believed in, that we're faulting him for saying what he believed in, Whether Taylor Ward wanted to be an ass about it, that's a different story. I mean, it wouldn't really make sense because, like we mentioned, it does no one any good. So I will say that I will offer him a bit of sympathy there of that. Even though it was fun to see Chris Bassett come back and roast him the next day. That one was fun to see. Yeah, that's great for Chris Bassett. Stand up for your teammate when that happens.
Yeah,
but
and you brought
pricey.
Well, you brought up Chris Bassett and about the conversations we had last week. With the Jays winning 6 in a row, and yeah, they lost yesterday, but there's been a lot of positives with Joey Loperfido. Will Wagner had a little bit of a stretch there where he went tad bit cold, but had a 3-hit day, all extra base hits, his first big league homer yesterday.
Yep.
Addison Barger's found it recently. Vladdy's a freak. We were at the point where we didn't really know if this team was going to be competitive next year, and it's something we talked about, and Chris Bassett said, that it's not fixable. And we keep hearing from Ross and Mark, 2025, and we're all like, we don't see the path. But over this last 6-game stretch, you've seen a lot of different things happen. Is it possible? Like, do you see a way of this team being competitive? And God, I hate using this because we used it for so many years. Being competitive in September and meaningful games in September. In 2025.
In 2025. Okay,
yeah.
yes.
We're not this year, buddy. No. It's close. It's done.
Here's the thing, and we have been contrary to this. I feel like we have just not been for this notion that they can be competitive in 2025. For the last month, really, we talked about since the trade deadline that it seems to be a little bit of fool's gold that this team can be competitive in 2025. There's just so many loose pieces on the roster that need to be filled in, and it just, I don't know what it is. Maybe I'm blind. Maybe I'm being delusional by this recent stretch of this team just being really fun to watch, and yet I'm trying to figure out why they're so fun to watch. And obviously they're winning a lot of games, they're hitting a lot of home runs, which is obviously the obvious answers. But in terms of stuff that's redeemable, I think it's that this Vlad thing is legitimate. That when you have a legitimate top 5 hitter in baseball, Vlad's 5th in baseball in OPS plus. I mean, Aaron Judge is the best hitter on the planet. Vlad said he's the best, but Aaron Judge is the best hitter on the planet. But after that, I mean, there are guys who you can say are having better seasons than Vlad. Obviously, Shohei Ohtani, Juan Soto, Bobby Witt, who obviously has been having a phenomenal season. He's going to be second in MVP behind Judge in the American League. Outside of that, it's fair game. I mean, even for some of those guys, it's fair game when it comes to Vlad. And having a legitimate top 5 cornerstone having the season that he's having, it's not as if, like you mentioned, obviously Will Wagner, congrats to him. Joey Loperfido was on a heater recently. Addison Barger hit a walk-off home run last time we talked. He's looking good. Spencer Horwitz is decent. It's not as if the young guys or anyone's having this remarkable Babe Ruth like David Schneider season from last year that we're just saying, okay, yeah, we can pencil all these guys into the lineup next year. But it's more so that maybe it's because we were just watching such bad baseball before all these moves that we're kind of being blinded by it. But I think that having Vlad be the elite hitter that he is and having a feasible way to build around. You look at the roster now. Alejandro Kirk is swinging the bat a lot better. Dalton Varsho, he's back to being around a league average hitter, and obviously we know how great he is with his glove. Spencer Horwitz is decent, some of these young guys. And you're looking at the free agency class, and the biggest impediment to last offseason was that regardless of who we wanted the Blue Jays to target, they were all flawed options. Whether it was Cody Bellinger or Jorge Soler, or regardless, that's not going to be the case this offseason. You have legitimate guys. Obviously, Anthony Santander is a name you hear a lot. Willy Adames is a free agent. I got to see him when I went to Milwaukee. He's a guy that I think could slot in, and maybe perhaps after a Bo trade, he could be your next shortstop. That's a guy that's interesting. Tyler O'Neill, obviously on the Red Sox. I believe he's a free agent as well. He's a guy that would obviously help this team. So they have a legitimate path to going out there and spending money this offseason. There were a lot of expiring contracts coming off the books. They'll have budget room, even if they don't increase the payroll, which I don't expect them to really do. I think that there is a path where they can go out there and get a couple legitimate impact bats this offseason to augment Vlad and the rest of these guys that have been hitting well recently. And you look at the starting pitching rotation, and I think this is the big part of it, is that Jose Barrios is on a nice little heater now. For the last month or so, he's been really good. He has an ERA under 3 since the All-Star break. The Case Ryan have risen up a little bit, although still not quite where you would hope it's at. Kevin Gausman looked fantastic in his last start, and I think those two guys specifically. Chris Bassett, we know what he is. He's high, like a low ceiling, high floor guy. He's going to be a guy who's going to eat a lot of innings and give you a lot of quantity with also a decent amount of quality as well, which obviously is very valuable. Bowden Francis is pitching better. You just see a pathway where the pitching and the offense, there could be a way where they're both good in 2025. And again, a big part of it as well, the hidden element, the Rob Manfred of it all, that now all of a sudden you don't need to be a 90-plus win team to make the postseason, like the Blue Jays when they missed the playoffs in 21, when they won 91 games. A high 80s win team will get you in. Even last season, them winning 89 games, it probably won't even take that many moving forward. So a big reason why we were optimistic this season coming in is that, you need to win that many games. 88 probably gets you in. I think that there is a path where this team can compete for and be an 88 win team. Now, obviously, will they, having this roster, is that enough to be a World Series team? That's long. We're a long ways from from deciding that, from evaluating that. But I do think that lately I may have been swayed a bit. I see a bit of a path. I see a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel where this team can be fun and competitive in 2025.
That's how you know you're a baseball fan, Rob. You can flip like that on a dime. And I'm with you because I'm the freaking same way. I hate it. I hate it so much. But here I am. And yeah, the one thing I think that's jumped out to me the most since the trade deadline, since a lot of these call-ups, they're not old. They're not slow. They're not unathletic. We don't have 39-year-old Justin Turner clogging up the lineup, who was fine for us, but like a little infield dribbler and thrown out regardless, or a single turn into a double. Never going to happen. But you bring in athletes, Addison Barger, Joey Loperfido, who I'm really enjoying watching right now. Yeah. Will Wagner, he may not have the big-time power, but, man, watching him hit an extra base hit, and basically, I don't know about you, but when I watch him run, gives me Dalton Varsho vibes. The way his little legs just gets going. He starts flying around out there, and that makes it more fun to watch, as we are seeing right now with winning 6 in a row and all that. But yes, there is a path to competing, and obviously, you need to revamp the entire bullpen.
Yes.
Other than maybe like Jordan Romano, assuming he comes back and he's all hunky dory like in years
past. By the way,
I
mean, a Chad Green, Jordan Romano, 8-9. You sign another big impact reliever, Jimmy Garcia, and all of a sudden, I think you have the foundation of like the starting point of a good bullpen.
Yes, you absolutely do, and you have emergence of guys like Genesis Cabrera from the left side, Brendan Little, who's fine as a second lefty. There are guys there. Another Ryan Burrs of it all and stuff like that. Not so sure.
Here's the thing. I will admit, we know the Blue Jays, regardless of whether people believe it or not, they're going to try to compete in 2025. That much is
Yeah.
clear. Ever since the trade deadline, we know that that's going to be the path. So perhaps maybe it's because maybe it's the notion of me just accepting reality, accepting that they're going to compete in 2025 and trying to find the most optimistic outlook. I'll admit, maybe that a little bit of that's going on, but I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't say that there are some interesting pieces that on this team. And I think that unlike last year, there is a path to a good offseason. There is a path to an offseason that can change the direction of this team. I want to introduce this little topic to you. Not really a topic, but more of a comparison.
Go for it.
The beginning of this season felt so much like 2017. If you recall that season, coming off the two playoff runs, and we're like, we so wanted this core to extend one more year, just one more year, and yet obviously 2017, as we know, they were just not at all fit to compete in the American League for a playoff spot. Much like this season, where it was pretty obvious, even when they were winning, it was like, okay, well, we know this team's not all that great. Now we have to rip the Band-Aid off. It feels as though with this recent stretch in August that this team skipped 2018 and 2019, those awful, uncompetitive seasons, and gone right into 2020, where it's that team that's unperfect. They're not a perfect team. We know there's a lot of holes. The team is probably closer to average than great, but you can see the seeds being planted. You can see that they are fun to watch. That even though they aren't the best team, the roster, that this is a watchable team that's enjoyable to watch. And yet there is a path where in 2021 you go out and you have the Marcus Semien, George Springer offseason. And now I'm not saying that that's going to happen this year, but that there is a path where with a good offseason this team can be competitive the next year. Maybe not a World Series team. Maybe you have to create a whole new window, and that's going to start with building around Vlad. But it feels as though maybe we've accelerated through the dark times of a contention window a bit.
Yeah, you say Ryan Burr and Tommy Nance are equivalent to that Rafael Dolis in 2020 type feel, right? We're kind of right there. God, Rafael Dolis, maybe go to sleep watching that guy pitch. But I think the key, and this, I don't know, this just could be me. I think the key to having a good offseason is starting with a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. extension. You start with that, it gives people more of an option to come and play. Right? Yes. You want to, let's say they want to go out there and go big. They don't care about position. They want to bat. And they go after a guy like Pete Alonso. Or hell, they want to make a legit push for Juan Soto. Well, the first question I would ask if I was Juan Soto, because they're great buddies, well, okay, that's great. If you want to give me like $1 billion, it's nice. But what are you doing with Vlad? Is he going to be gone at the end of my first year or not? And I think that's going to be a big question. And if they say, well, we're not sure, that will sway players the other way, because they're like, well, how do I know we're even going to compete after year one? And so that's going to be a big thing. I think it's getting more and more likely that you got to re-sign Vlad regardless of the price.
Yeah. Well, I think that's at this point a no-brainer at this point.
You have
whether they should do it, that's a no-brainer. Whether they will do it, that's where the questions come in.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I'm excited, man. This offseason is going to be it's going to be wild with the obviously, needing to re-sign Vlad, the crazy, actually quite deep bats in free agency, and Bo Bichette. What the hell happens? Obviously, he returned to the team yesterday, did some work on the field, stuff like that. He's going to try and get into last couple weeks of the season, 2 or 3 weeks of the season, which is fine. I don't know what happens. Value right now is probably as low. It's definitely the lowest of his career. With the couple calf injuries he's had. He had with that one last season against the Orioles, and then he's had 2 this season. Soft tissue stuff is a scary thing. And if I was a team, if you're going to re-sign Bo, then as another team, if you were going to re-sign Bo, then it makes it more enticing. But on a rental deal, the guy with a lot of calf issues recently, it's a scary thing to do. So do you hang on to him at that point? And if you get regular Bo Bichette, and let's say 2022 Vlad, because God, you can't expect this Vlad in 2021 to continue, or can you? I don't know.
Oh God, I don't have those conversations.
I know. I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing 2023 or 2022 or 2023 conversations where all we need is 2022.
I don't know. There's a lot of versions of Vlad, but right now I'm enjoying this one where he's has 169 OPS plus, highest of his career.
You give me regular Bo Bichette and this Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and then lock up Vlad. It makes things very intriguing. This offseason is going to be wild, and I have a gut feeling that Ross Atkins will be the one doing the moves. So
But hey, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I feel like, in a sense, they may have built up a little bit of goodwill ever since that trade deadline, which we all acknowledge was a good trade deadline. And I will say, if Ross Atkins is going to be making the calls in 2025, there is no excuse why they can't go out there and have a massive offseason. Because eventually something has to give, right? Eventually something has to give. You can't just have no one fired. You can't just have everyone back and nothing change. And so if Ross Atkins is going to be the guy in 2025, and ownership is going to say, look, we trust in you, Mark. We trust your guy. Here we go out there and build a contender for us. Then at this point, they actually have to go out there and give them flexibility to do. And not that ownership hasn't done that, which they have. We talked about many times on this show that they have, but they have to go out there and make some moves. They have to go out there and get some impact bats. And they're going to need more than one impact bat. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
So we'll see how it goes. Obviously the Bo Bichette conversation, that's one that I think we need to allocate maybe almost a whole episode to. Maybe we'll do that later in the dog days of, after the season ends, perhaps, because I'm sure that that'll be pertinent. But right now, Pricey, I want to talk about a proposition for September, and it's going to be related to, actually related to two guys who I think will factor in 2025. Two pitchers, Yariel Rodriguez and Jake Bloss. Here's our Stat Genius segment of the week.
Let's go.
All right. So first off, we're going to talk about Yariel Rodriguez. And as we know, he's struggled. These last couple starts, they've been a little wonky. The velo's down, the home runs are up, the hard-hit contact is up. I did a little bit of a deep dive. So now between Toronto and Buffalo, so obviously between AAA and the major leagues, Yariel Rodriguez has pitched he's over 85 innings now. He's cleared 85 innings at both levels so far in 2024. Mm-hmm. Obviously, as we all know, didn't pitch professionally last year, pitched briefly at the World Baseball Classic for Team Cuba. And in 2022 in Japan, pitched 54 innings in I can't remember what the league was called. Is it the NBO? Regardless, he's cleared 30 innings in the last 2 years. So basically 85 innings versus 54. I think it's gotten to the point where he's a little bit running out of gas. If I were to say, because obviously we've seen good from Yariel Rodriguez. We've seen enough really good starts. If you recall when we went to Seattle, the Canada Day start against Houston, he's looked like a different guy the last couple starts. So that begs me to bring up the question. John Schneider, he's been on Sportsnet Radio the past week, and he said a number of interesting things. I believe it was on Blair and Barker. He said that he does not foresee the Blue Jays going to a six-man rotation, and subsequently did say that he wants Jake Bloss to make a few starts in September. So you kind of think, how is it going to work? Someone's got to be the odd man out. They're not going to go to the six-man, right? And Yariel Rodriguez, we know if we're going to lessen his workload, and Jake Bloss is going to start today for the Buffalo Bisons, his fourth start, and a big issue why he isn't up here yet is that his pitch count is not built up. So here's my proposition, how to introduce Jake Bloss to the roster and how to lessen Yariel Rodriguez's workload. September 1st, the Blue Jays play in Minnesota. Yariel Rodriguez is scheduled to start that game. What I'm suggesting is that you throw out Ryan Yarbrough in a bullpen game that day. September 2nd is Labor Day Monday. You have an off day that day. September 3rd will be 5 days rest for Jake Bloss on his regular turn in Buffalo. You do a half start. You do a half Jake Bloss, half Yariel Rodriguez, however you want to structure it. Maybe you give each of them 2-3 innings, and you run that rotation for the rest of the season. You run your regular four guys, obviously, Barrios, Gosman, Chris Bassett, Bowden Francis, and then that fifth start will be a combination of them both. You get to see Jake Bloss. He doesn't have to go out there and throw 90 pitches because that's the fear right now. He's not stretched out. And you also don't have to have Yariel Rodriguez just waste bullets when he's kind of running out of gas. So what do you think of this proposition, Pricey?
I mean, anything to get Jake Bloss on the roster. I mean, give me another reason to watch this team. I've already found quite a few with all these younger players and all the excitement and the energy in the team right now. I'm down for it because you mentioned how Yariel looks gassed. And let's be honest, he just looks out of gas. The misses are pretty bad. Even the first batter of the ball game yesterday, right? Jaron Duran, Kirky setting up and in a decent amount, ends up right down the middle at 92. And it's like, that's a pretty painful miss. Yeah. And for a guy like Jake Bloss, honestly, I just think they want him to start. So if anything, because people got to remember, this is the last and the only year that you can option Yariel Rodriguez to AAA Buffalo. Every year afterwards, you can't do that. So
I'm not saying option him. I'm saying that you have the piggyback. Yeah.
I'm saying maybe I don't know. Not saying you
Oh,
shouldn't.
maybe you option him.
That's what I'm saying. The Jays
Okay.
option him down to Buffalo, flip him for Jake Bloss, get him up here when the pitch counts at a decent number, and just kind of see what you got. Because this is the year that you can do that with Yariel Rodriguez. Get him in some low leverage stuff, right in the minor leagues, where he's clearly dominating the minimal time he's been down there. That's my thought. I mean, look, would it be interesting to see Yariel and Jake Bloss piggyback each other? Sure. But if I'm the Blue Jays and I'm a fan of the Blue Jays, I want Jake Bloss to start for me next year. So if that's the case, I don't want him piggybacking nobody. I want him out there, and I want him starting a game, period. But we'll see what happens.
Maybe Yariel is a piggyback. That's
It could
where
be.
they go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to work it. He's up to what, 65, 70 pitches in that range in his last outing. So I'm curious kind of what they're going to do today. Like you mentioned, his fourth start with the Bisons today.
Yep.
I'm curious how he does. I'm curious what the pitch count is going to be. I really care less about the results because we've noticed that he's good. So the results don't matter to me. It's how many pitches he's going to throw, because that'll show us where he's at in his kind of, I don't want to say growth or development, but more or less building up, I guess is the right phrase.
And here's the thing too, is that because like like supposedly the plan that I'm outlining right now, it would be on September 2nd when you'd have to actually make a decision on Jake Bloss, and by then the roster will expand by one spot, so you could theoretically bring him up without actually like having to
Yeah.
set anyone down. I mean, worst case scenario, Tommy Nance, great knowing you, buddy, but thanks for the short memories. I mean, the worst case scenario, you can just do that if you want to bring up another bat subsequently after bringing up Jake Bloss. But I think that it just feels like a soft landing spot, and obviously not a soft landing spot because of the opponent, because they're going to be playing Philly that first day, so that's obviously going to be a tough start. So maybe that's a detractor too. You don't want them to start against a really good Phillies lineup, but at the same time, there's no easy way to do it, because after that they're going to Atlanta, then the Mets come to town. Those are two playoff teams right around battling for a wild card spot. So there really is no soft landing spot. It would have been nice to have him up maybe a little earlier for these Angels games or the Cubs games, because that's like in theory a bit of an easier matchup, quote unquote easier matchup. But regardless, you have to see Jake Bloss pitch, and I think that whether it's the Phillies or not, throw him in the fire and see how he does, because he's a guy who's not at the same time too, he's not some he's a young guy. He's younger than me, which is insane to say, but he's not a spring chicken exactly in terms of a prospect. He's 23 years old. He's already made his big league debut with the Astros, so it's not as if it's some 19-year-old kid who's making his MLB debut. He's a guy who does have a little bit of experience under his belt, albeit limited at the big league level and just in professional baseball, period. So if that was me, that's how I would structure it. We'll see how the Blue Jays do it. I do think that we will see Jake Bloss pitch for the Blue Jays in September at some point.
I think you have to. Like he's forcing your hand, and also Yariel hasn't been any good and looks exhausted. So I mean, it's like, what are you doing here? You're running Yariel into the ground. It doesn't make any sense. So hey, you know what? Speaking of Jake Bloss in the minor leagues, there's a lot more positivity in the minor leagues, and it's fun to talk about. Let's get right to it on the farm. Let's talk about the kid. Let's talk about the gift that just continues to give for Blue Jay fans. Arjun
McAdoo. Okay. We're going to see Charles McAdoo. McAdoo.
Well, unfortunately not, because he's been in an 0 for recently, but I think he's like 0 for his last 12 or something. But regardless, Arjun Namala, I mean, hit his 15th home run of the season yesterday. On the season now, because he had that rough start. We talked about it earlier on in the year. He's got an OPS of 799 now. On the year, and in his last 10 games, hitting 309 with a 413 on base and a 603 slug. He had 4 bombs, walked 11 times. The only really downfall about Namala right now is the strikeouts, right? 103 strikeouts in 72 games, so it's a very, very large number. But I don't give a crap. I mean, I don't know how many times I've said it, whether it's my videos or on here or anything like that. You give me the raw tools. You give me the stuff that you can't teach. And then the rest can be figured out, right? Why do Blue Jay fans love Teoscar Hernandez? He mashes baseballs.
Addison Barger's another good example.
Exactly. There's some swing and miss there. Who cares? Aaron Judge strikes out a lot. You think people care? No. No one cares. And for Arjun Namala,
100 OPS in August? No, I'm sure people don't care.
Exactly. Maybe that was a little bit of maybe a little different thing there. But regardless of that, he's got an 800 OPS at A-ball at 18 years old, where the average age is 21. And he has been ridiculous over the last, it's got to be a month or two now. He has been outstanding. And people want him called up to Vancouver. I think it's just a safe landing spot for an 18-year-old to continue there, let him rip up the end of the season. and starting with Vancouver next year. If he rips it up to start the year, up to New Hampshire you go, right? So that's kind of what I see happening. But hey, some positive news and with a bat in the Jays organization. So that's good news. Now, along to two pitchers, because Adam Macko, we talked about it when Ricky Tiedemann went down with TJ, right? With Tommy John surgery. We're like, oh, Adam Macko's gone too. Great. This is all. He actually pitched in A-ball 3 days ago, went 2 innings. Who cares about the stats? He's more or less just to kind of build him back up. But he actually pitched in 2 innings at A-ball. So he's back in action, which is very nice to see. Close out the year, hopefully, with a good last month and a bit for Adam Macko. Just wanted to bring that up. So that's a positive sign. And Kendrys Rojas. Rob, I mean, I don't know what the future holds for this kid, but he is our 12th ranked prospect, which is a farce to begin with. He has been literally unhittable in his last 3 starts. But regardless of that, these are his season numbers. How about this? 45 innings pitched, 52 strikeouts, 11 walks to 52 punchouts, and an ERA in 45 innings as a starter of $1.79. He has dominated as a lefty, and he's only 21 at advanced A. What I said, A-ball itself, one level lower, the average age was 21. He is 21, a level higher, and full-on dominating, and I had to talk about his last 3 outings, which he was in trouble constantly in his last start, but just found a way to get out of it. 20 innings pitched, 1 run allowed in his last 3 starts, 8 hits, 4 walks, 22 strikeouts. Kid's insane. Now, it's at high A ball, but again, it's a little bit of a sample size now. He has been elite. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a little call to AA to
season ends up. Yeah, that's where I was going to go to. Yeah, maybe a little call to AA, give him to get his feet wet a bit, kind of like Jake Bloss at the major league level. Want to get his feet wet a bit, so that way, if he does well, you can start next season in AA, and then if you're in AA, you got to have a good start there next year. You're in shouting distance of the major leagues, so we'll see.
Yeah, he was absolutely great, and that's one thing I wanted to bring up. Also, not going to bring up his stats in particular, but the guy we saw in Vancouver, Jace Borfin. Was actually named Northwest Player of the Week last week, and he was a monster. Oh, just an OPS of 1,300 for the week. 3 bombs, 8 RBIs. I mean, God, the double 9 hits in 5 games. I mean, he was a machine, and we talked about it recently, how his numbers have skyrocketed over the last couple weeks or so. I'm just going to try and find him quickly here. His last 10, 375 with a 468 on base. I mean, he has been absurd recently. We saw him play in the one game we were there. He went deep, so that was good. That was good and fun. That was good and fun to watch. The last guy I want to bring up is Alan Roden. And do I have a soft spot? Of course I do. But again, a guy who has just been crushing the baseball. He has multi-hit games every game. It is absurd. He's hitting 368 with a 430 on base in his last 10. And now, on the season with the Buffalo Bisons, where is he here? He's hitting 301 with a 391 on base, an 848 OPS. He's got, where are we here? Where's only 10 doubles, which is kind of shocking. Only 52 games, but 25 strikeouts or 25 walks to 30 strikeouts. We obviously know that's the Jays. They love that stuff. And he has been incredible recently. So some positive signs.
I'm wondering because I do think that they should do the Tommy Nance thing where you bring him up for Jake Bloss, you DFA him, and then obviously you have that one roster spot. I mean, is it Roden or is it Jonathan Clase? I mean, you got to think that it would be nice to see one of these guys kind of make their debut, their Blue Jays debut. I know for Roden it would be his major league debut, but I mean that's where I think. I hope that's where we're headed.
I will say for Clase that he hasn't played in 3 days. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Obviously, they always have an off day on Monday, but he didn't play yesterday and he didn't play Sunday. So, or was Sunday 24th? I don't know. Days are weird.
I remember there was discourse. There was debate whether he would be the 27th guy for the doubleheader.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, it didn't end up being the case,
and he hasn't played since. So that's something to keep an eye on. Also, he hasn't been very good at all for the Buffalo Bisons. Okay. Jonathan Clase, he's hitting 211 with a 260 on base, 612 OPS. 18 strikeouts to 5 walks. He hasn't been any good. Then the 2 doubles that we saw, he hasn't really been mounted for anything really at the AAA level to this point. Obviously, very small sample. He can have a good week, and there we go. He's back to being great. So that's that. The org's doing pretty good, and seeing all these hurt pitchers in our organization. And I'm going through the top 30 prospects. I'm like, oh, great looking. Hurt. Oh, hurt. It's like, but we'll get there.
Elvis Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, listen to this. I mean, real quick before we wrap it up. Trey is Savage, Ricky Tiedemann. Obviously, they just got Cal Stevenson in the draft. Adam Macko just returned, thank God. We talked about that Fernando Perez guy. I poked myself in the eye there. Jeez. Yeah, he was the guy that he was like their 23rd ranked prospect early in the season. He's jumped to 11. He was in the rookie showcase game. That's that. Landon Marudas, I talked about him at the beginning of the year. Like, he had a great start, 3 outings, and then he got hurt with the arm injury, and he was gone. Johnny King, the high school kid they just drafted. Brandon Barriera. There's a lot. And Warren Watts-Brown, right? This is my guy, who I love. I'm loving the stats on this kid.
Yeah.
Those are all guys in your top 20. All arms, most of which hurt. So I don't know. Actually, what am I saying? Yeah, I'm excited, man. I'm excited with what the prospects look like, and we'll see. We'll see. The future is bright, which I never thought I'd say for this organization right now. So, all right, Rob.
Hey, when good vibes, they move around, right? You have a good little stretch here at the major league level, then you kind of see some good things happening. We said for the first time forever, we're talking about, hey, maybe 2025 competing. We can talk ourselves into it a bit. So hopefully after a good off season, we see how that goes. And obviously, you got to finish strong. A big part of why we're so optimistic is because the quality of ball has been so good the last month. So hopefully that continues through September until the end of the season.
Absolutely, bud. I don't know if the fellas want us to bring it up, but I will bring it up anyways. Are you wearing your shirt? I don't know. Mine's over in the
homage, baby.
You know what? You talk about it for a second because I got to get my shirt.
Okay, grab there quick a second. So for everyone, we advertised it last week. Homage specializes in ultra comfy, high quality looks, repping sports, pop culture, and more legendary moments. Learn more about Homage with the link in the description of this video once it gets posted or uploaded, whatever you prefer. There's Pricey's, the MLB Jam one. This is my Blue Jays back-to-back World Series champs from obviously 92 and 93. And obviously one funny thing that I actually wanted to mention, I didn't mention on our last show, but when I was in Chicago a couple weeks ago now, at the Cubs shop, or not, it wasn't really a Cubs shop. It was more like a Wrigley sports shop. So they had like Bears stuff. They had, White Sox Cubs stuff. A lot of their stuff was sponsored by Homage. So that was a nice little, good to see that as well. So obviously, as we mentioned last podcast too, it's not just sports stuff. It's also, just other pop culture stuff as well. And not just the Blue Jays. You can get any sport, whether you're, obviously NFL season starting. So you can rep your NFL team with Homage and the stuff. Like we mentioned, ultra comfy.
Oh, they're really comfy. I love this thing. I wear it too often. Just gonna put it that way. All right. Well, Rob, appreciate you coming on as always, pal. It was a blast as always. And look at that, a positive pod. Isn't it fun?
Love it. Positive from start to finish.
Love this. Yeah, we were negative the first half of the last one. So we were great this time. All positivity. Hopefully the Jays can give us positive vibes to finish off this Red Sox series. I don't care how bad we are. Beating up the Red Sox and putting them to bed. Oh, chef's kiss. That would be a perfect way to end off the next couple of days for the Blue Jays. They're in action tonight. I'm not even going to bother previewing it because by the time people see this or listen to it, the game's over. So, Berto, thank you so much for coming on. For AC and Sammy behind the scenes, as always, appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Blue Jays Center on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.